a U.S. senator destroyed by blackmail.
He was not bound by the truth or by facts.
The country's most outrageous political demagogue ascending toward the peak of American power.
Millions upon millions of devoted followers.
This is a story of heroes willing to face down tyranny and the risk to the country if they fail.
Rachel Maddow presents Ultra, Season 2 of the chart-topping original podcast. Listen now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Banterly, the Gen Z podcast about pop culture, media, and everything between. My name is Suha.
And my name is Aidan, and welcome back, everybody. I feel like I always talk about how hot it is, but now I feel like it's gotten horribly hot, but I'm excited. I'm adjusted from Europe. I have a fun weekend ahead of me. Work is going great. No complaints. How about you?
It is also very hot here in SoCal, to the point where I just don't want to be outside ever. But it's been good. I got to explore a new mall last weekend, and that was kind of fun. I'm going to San Francisco in a few weeks to visit one of my best friends from high school, and I'm taking the train both ways. I've heard really cool things about like the Pacific Coast Amtrak, and so I'm taking that on my way back, and I'm taking one that goes through like the mountainous regions of California, like near Yosemite area. It's about a 12-hour travel day each day. And so, like, I'm going Monday, coming back Friday. But I'm really excited. I think Amtrak has Wi-Fi, but, like, I'll bring a book. They have the observation car. I'm, like, just excited to kind of get to do that by myself.
That's going to be beautiful. I've seen, like, TikToks of the Pacific Coast Highway Amtrak. It just looks insane. I also will say that this is kind of an embarrassing fact, but I thought it was Yosemite until embarrassingly recently. It's like, oh, Yosemite. It looks like Yosemite.
Yosemite. I can't say that like you're wrong for like having thought that. Yeah, no, it kind of does. It's beautiful though.
Shall we get into our question of the day? So, our question of the day today is, what is your favorite thing to cook? Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think I'm typically more of a baker. I love to like make desserts and breads and stuff. But I also am someone who like I will see a recipe go viral on TikTok or see someone eat something and be like, I need to make that, and I'll make it once. So like I'd say generally my favorite things to cook are anything from Sudan, like anything with Sudanese origin, because that's like what I grew up eating at home. But it's like also a treat because I don't get to cook it that often because I typically don't buy in my like weekly grocery shop the ingredients required. So I have to go out of my way. And so that just always feels really like important to me. I do it every few months. But yeah, I like to cook random things once. Earlier this week, I failed making mango sticky rice for my family because I undercooked the rice because I was too lazy to let it sit and soak overnight because I wanted it that night. So unfortunately, the rice was crunchy, which is not how it's supposed to have been. But the coconut concoction and the mango itself, which obviously I did not grow, I just cut up, those were really good. So I will try and make it again. But yeah, what about you? Is there like a favorite thing for you to cook?
Yeah, sort of in the similar boat is I enjoy baking a lot more than I enjoy cooking, but I don't do either of them a whole lot. Most of the extent of my cooking is just reheating Trader Joe's things. But recently I learned of this kind of basic recipe, but so good and easy and kind of reminiscent of that Emily Mariko salmon thing that was trending on TikTok a couple years ago. But I went to Canada in March with some of my high school friends. We rented a place for a week and we all worked remotely together. So we grocery shopped before we went so we could plan out our meals. And one of my friends, she made the same thing every day for lunch. It was so easy. It's salmon with rice and mayo, spicy mayo, or I use mayo and sriracha. Okay, this is controversial, but I can't say that spicy sriracha word right. I say sriracha.
You just said it right. Sriracha, yeah.
Sriracha, that's how you say it. I had to stop and think before I said it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But I normally say sriracha, but then I got made fun of. So I mix mayo with sriracha. And then you have those little seaweed packets, and then you make a little sandwich. You put it all in, make a little bite. So easy. And the ingredients, I just get frozen salmon from Trader Joe's, air fry it,
Yeah.
cook the rice, microwavable rice, get my packets of, sometimes I'll add in some avocado for some zhuzh.
There was a while when I was working full time that I would do that with either salmon or tuna, and I would make onigiri, like the little handhelds that like you can buy in like Japanese or Asian convenience stores. So I would make those at home, and it was always so easy. And like I bought the little thing to pack it all in, and it was like I would make 2 or 3 for lunch, and it was great. What's weird is I am not a fish person. I hate eating fish, but I love sushi. And if I can't, like, it's how I used to feel about avocado, which is like if I became aware, or even eggs sometimes, if I became aware of the fact that I was eating eggs or avocado or fish, then I start to get grossed out. And I don't know why.
I mentioned that the salmon dish that my friend taught me was very reminiscent of the Emily Mariko salmon dish that was everywhere on TikTok, which is a surprising place that I've learned how to cook from. I definitely knew how to cook before, but it's such a easy way to get a recipe, because when you're like looking up a recipe online and the first 5 pages are just paragraphs and paragraphs telling you a story about the recipe. And so having a TikTok that's, a minute recipes in the comment section, you can see how it's prepared, you get a visual, you get a written, you get all the different ways that people can learn, and you do it, and it's easy. And Nara Smith is a big one right now.
Let's make some lasagna from scratch. It was a gloomy day outside, so what better way to spend it than cooking a comforting meal?
I think she's the one that makes everything. Her kids are like, I want pancakes. So she's like, okay, let me go harvest some flour for you, and then we can start with the recipe, which I don't get because that's not realistic for me and a lot of people. But my favorite food influencer was Jeremy Sheck.
Let's perfect roast potatoes with a little bit of food science.
He was like this kid. He was at Cornell. Now he lives in Barcelona. And he cooked the most amazing thing. One of my favorite things that I cook are these roasted potatoes that I got from him, where you like boil them, you smash them, and then you roast them. And oh my gosh.
Some salt to get inside the potatoes. So when you eat them, it's seasoned on the inside and the outside.
Is he the one that did that? Because I make those all the time. I knew I got it from TikTok, so.
Yeah, that was probably him. He had like a swoop in his hair, a little white boy.
Yeah. Oh.
Speaks all sorts of languages. Very talented.
TikTok has been like remarkable. I think it's made so many different foods accessible, which is really cool. There's so many recipes I never would have thought I could cook, but like seeing someone do it, yeah, like it's a minute. Obviously they cut and like fast forward and whatever, has been really helpful. My one qualm though is it's very rare to get a TikTok recipe where they put the quantities, and that drives me insane because then I'm sitting there like watching the video first 15 times, second like scrolling into my phone like an idiot, or like zooming in trying to be like, what teaspoon did they use, what measuring cup. I always end up on food TikTok during Ramadan, and people are posting like these really cool like Middle Eastern or North African or Sub-Saharan African recipes that then become very fun to follow. And there's always one every year that becomes like the staple dessert of that year, which is like one year it was like Biscoff cheesecake that everyone and their mother was making, and it was delicious, but it was truly everywhere.
The power of TikTok.
Really, yeah. Nara Smith she's interesting. There's no way she can take it further, right? Like she's done, right? Like I say this, and then tomorrow she's gonna have like harvested the seeds for a new plant that she's gonna make in like 10 years.
I don't get it. It's not even entertaining for me. I swipe away if I see her. I'm just like, okay.
It's the trad wife content. Everyone loves trad wife content. It is what it is. On that note about what we like to cook, we can dive into this week's episode topic, which is The Bear Season 3, which dropped, I think, 2 weeks ago at this point.
What if I wanted to open a restaurant? They're hard and they're brutal and they're specific, but I know how to do it.
And it follows a Chicago-based restaurant owned by Carmen, who is like a prestigious chef and came back to take over his brother's restaurant. And it kind of follows Carmen and his sous chef, Sydney, their family and friends, Richie, Tina, Sugar, all these amazing characters as they're now transitioning the restaurant from a Chicago Italian beef store to a fine dining establishment. So when we open on this season, they just finished their soft opening.
Chef said, yeah.
Remember you promised me we wouldn't run out of forks?
Yeah.
Guess what the fuck just happened?
Chef ran out of forks.
Yeah, Bear, we ran out of fucking forks. I'm gonna buy you a
I love this show. I don't think I watched season 1 when it was airing, but last summer I think I watched both season 1 and 2. And so good. Such a stressful, action-packed show. Like you're on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Sandwiches. Yes, chef. I'm gonna make 3 sections, okay? They're gonna be wet, hot, and sweet. All right, I'm gonna take green tape, make those sections.
Okay, Marcus, where are we on cakes?
Get in there.
Getting there. What the fuck Marcus, what the fuck are you doing still working on this shit?
And I love Jeremy Allen White in Shameless. And so I was familiar with some of the actors, and it had that nice mix of funny humor with good drama and great characters. I think that's what makes this show so special is the character work that they do. But I had no idea that this show was coming out, the new season. Like literally did not see anything on TikTok, saw no ads anywhere until we were talking about this episode. And then like, oh, The Bear, it's out. Oh, okay, I'll watch it. That'll be fun. But I don't live under a rock. Like, I know I live under a rock for some things, but for things that I like I'm surprised that I didn't see that. And I don't know if that was on purpose. I don't know. Did you see a lot of talk about this before this season came out?
No, I think I saw that Ayo Edebiri tweeted and like posted the trailer for season 3 at one point, which is how I knew it was coming out. And I'm just a massive Ayo Edebiri fan. Like I like follow her on everything. I love her so much. So I kind of knew it was happening. But yeah, I was surprised at how quiet the release was, given that like the show had such a successful award season. But like regardless of how much they advertised, it still came in as I think like 5.4 million people or something to that extent watched it the first day it came out. And I think it was rated like the number 1 most watched scripted season premiere on Hulu. So I think it's one of those shows that at this point, they're not really looking for new audience members. I think it's like they're tapping into who already is like watched seasons 1 and 2 instead of really telling people like, oh, go back and watch the whole thing and then watch the new season that just came out.
Yeah. And it's interesting that even though it has such it's broken all those records, that the critics this year seem to be half and half. It's not as everybody's not all in love with it, which is interesting because I definitely saw, and we had talked about this when we were preparing, like that first episode is so artsy fartsy that I was like, what's happening? I was so confused what time period we were in because it does jump a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, I think this show, as evidenced by like one of the episodes we're going to talk about later, which is the episode that Ayo Edebiri directed, which was episode 6, and it followed Tina, that this show is so good at the character development. I love shows that give characters consistent traits because I think a lot of shows will start out by like archetyping characters to get you to remember them, but then they'll like weirdly veer off from what you expect. Whereas all the characters on this show feel very well developed and very true to themselves throughout the entire series. Like no one has really made a move that has made me question like, oh, I don't know that character actually would have done that. But to that point, yeah, like there's less of an overarching plot about the restaurant itself. Like at the end of episode 10, like the 2 quote unquote cliffhangers we're left with are, what did the restaurant review and I think the Chicago Tribune say, and is Sydney gonna leave? But that Sydney one speaks to the point of it being so character driven, whereas like the success of the restaurant has become like, yes, important because you want to know if they're going to keep getting funding, but less so in the overall story that you would have expected having watched season 1 and 2.
I still think, though, that even though it is a lot less plot driven, it still had the elements of the first 2 seasons with the stressfulness. There were less kitchen scenes that were making me want to rip my hair out, but that scene of Sugar going into labor after the store and driving on the highway, oh my goodness.
Trying to call everyone after they locked their phones away.
Call Sydney.
Calling Sydney. Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Call Carmi.
Calling Carmi. Your call has
What
been
the
forwarded
fuck, Carmi? You never answer your goddamn phone.
That was beautifully set up.
Oh my gosh, I was shaking.
is not available. Please record your message when you
I thought she was going to get hit by a car. I thought that someone was going to hit her.
That was so well done.
And she called her mom. I was like, yes, get to the hospital, girly pop.
Call Mom.
Calling Mom.
Mom? What did you think I wasn't saying before?
That you didn't want me around. Am I right?
I don't know. I think what lacked this season for me was some of the character interaction that made it feel so heartwarming isn't the right word, but like so I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Almost relatable, I'd say, like seeing the glimpse into the personal lives interact with the professional lives. This season stepped back from the steps it took last season to set Carmi and Sid up as friends, to the point like people were shipping them as romantic partners. But this season they felt strictly professional. You know, we didn't really get a glimpse of them doing anything friendly. And even Sid and Richie, who personally have one of my favorite relationships on the show, like we saw less of them. Like they have a general support for each other, but not much beyond that. Or even the beautiful mentorship and like friendship that evolved with Sid and Tina, which has been the greatest relationship arc in the show, in my opinion. We didn't get much of that. And so I think that's where I felt a little disconnected. I cried watching Napkins because I was like, oh, this is what I wanted this season to look like. I love watching the characters like interact in such a personal and important way. I don't know. I think maybe the artsiness took from it a little bit. Okay, how many shots of Chicago or like the restaurant or like random things can we get? I still really loved the season. The Bear does a really interesting job, though, I think, of depicting like panic attacks, mental illness, depression, all the ways that it manifests. And I mean, it's like an underlying theme to the series, right? Because like the reason Carmi comes back to the beef and now the bear is because Mikey, his brother, commits suicide. And so I think that's a really interesting way to incorporate it into like a restaurant and like food of like perfect timing and like everything needs to be right and like the conversations of controlled chaos. But to the point of it being artsy, I think the way that it depicts the panic attacks and like stress that characters are going through is really beautifully done.
There's so many sounds in a kitchen already, and they really utilize each of them perfectly. As someone who's worked in the kitchen before, the chopping of the carrots, then the washing, the sounds of the pots boiling, and there's so much going on that when you're a viewer just watching, you're overwhelmed, and then seeing someone else overwhelmed, and they use sound and music to put you in the shoes of the character who's having this anxiety issue.
To that point of like how the sounds come in, I think the show's composers are like next level. They're so amazing because I feel like when I'm watching it, it like almost becomes claustrophobic just to view it. I loved watching Sydney's at the end too, and watching her kind of have to step out of her own party to like fully have that panic attack, I thought was really well done.
So my favorite episode, which you touched on a little bit in the beginning, was Napkins, the one that was directed by Ayo Edebiri, which I didn't know it was directed by her until the very end credits. And I was like, I had to like rewind because I was like, did I just see her name under directed by? And it was. And Tina is my favorite character. And this episode gives a background to how Tina joined the restaurant. Short summary, she gets let go of her job of 15 years. And so she's out looking for new jobs. And she doesn't have a college degree. She's an older person trying to find a job in the era of LinkedIn and social media, and everything's online now. She's doing it the old-fashioned way, walking into a place, dropping a resume, and everybody's like, just apply on LinkedIn. Like, what are you doing?
Hi. Can I leave my resume?
You could just apply on LinkedIn. It'll be easier.
She ends up not finding anything after what seems like months and months of looking, and her family, they need her to have a job so she can support her family because they were going through harder times. And then she stumbles upon the restaurant. She wants a coffee. They give her a free sandwich. She starts crying in the back, and she meets Carmi's brother, Michael, and they have a beautiful conversation, open up their hearts to each other, and at the end, he gives her a job, and that's how she joins the family.
I need a new line cook.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I have an actual resume.
What the fuck am I gonna do with a resume? I'll go clean the toilet with the fucking resume. I don't need a resume. I talk to you. What? You know? What do you think?
Tina started out a hard woman. Like, she was very like, don't mess with Tina. Like, Tina's not very like, she wasn't very warm, but then she's warmed up a lot as the seasons have progressed and as she's gotten more passionate in the craft of cooking. And it was nice to see that side of her again and to see where she came from. Yeah. What did you think?
I loved that. It was easily my favorite of the season as well. And I think Tina is just like, her relationship with Sydney is a beautiful character arc, but her internal one as well, where she is willing to like let go of the routine and get used to becoming like a fine dining chef, and her willingness to learn and like say yes, chef, to everything that like Sydney or Carmen ask of her is so remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that for a lot of people watching it before, they didn't really think of how Tina got there. I think there's an assumption typically of like women of color who are not college educated, just like always working in like food or retail or something, which has, I guess, happened in the past. But this did such a good job of showing like, no, she was working like your traditional 9 to 5. She was working as like a payroll manager for 15 years. This was the next step. It wasn't like something to look down upon or anything like that. Like, she took pride in the work she was doing with the beef and now the bear. And I just loved that so much. But yeah, her conversation with Mikey was probably my favorite scene of the season.
Yo, cousin, what did you say? What did you say? Let me go deal with this motherfucker, all right? Look, thank you. Think about it, all right?
Tina Marrero, by the way.
Hey, Michael Berzado. Okay. And I appreciated the conversation.
Me too.
You know, yeah. All right, enjoy the sandwich,
man.
okay?
I will.
Think about it. I'm right in there.
All right,
dude, honestly, like,
Yeah, it was wonderful. She's a great director. And I think the critics thought that was the best episode as well. Like, it wasn't just us.
Yeah, it was easily my favorite episode. Ayo Edebiri, direct them all, please. I love you so much.
I know. Bring her back.
I could talk about Ayo Edebiri for years.
She's popped off recently. After The Bear, I was like, oh my God. And then my favorite movie of 2023 was Theater Camp, and she was hilarious in Theater Camp.
What is it?
It's the art of surprise. It pushes the envelope of what theater can be.
Absolutely. But also, what do we think it is?
It causes a heart to skip a beat, but safely.
Does anybody have an answer that's like not poetry?
This is a side tangent, so I don't know if it's relevant, but Ayo Edebiri is one of those people that like we've talked about my delusions in the past on the podcast of I'm like, I'm going to go to the Olympics. I should have been a Disney kid, all this stuff. But my really bad one that I've had for years now is that there are some celebrities in this world that I'm convinced I would either be best friends with or that I could pull. And this is a really bad like delusion. But like Ayo Edebiri is one of them. Like I'm like, oh, if we had one conversation, we would be besties for life. And so I always feel like I'm rooting for a friend. So call me parasocial, but my African queen, I will always cheer for fellow Africans. So I love her. Child of immigrants. Also, she went to NYU. So like we have so many levels we can connect on, and I'm convinced we're going to be best friends. Yeah, it's a really bad delusion. I have like a whole list that we can get into another time.
She seems super authentic. And one of my other favorite scenes in The Bear that she's in was when they were at the funeral service for Ever, and she was at that it felt like an actors on actors roundtable.
Yeah, but it was real chefs. That was so cool.
I know, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, wow, the way these people are talking about cooking and baking makes it like these actors are great. Like it just felt so natural. And Sydney blended in so nicely with all that. And then come to find out, those are real chefs. And I kind of thought that when I was watching, I was like, these people, one, I've never seen them ever act in my entire life, and they're really good. And two, the way they were talking, like I saw some guy, like he was dropping a lot of likes, and I was like, that seems a little too natural. I'd feel like they don't normally like write in like like that. This is so cool.
Soft chocolate ganache, and I put like all these different like dollops on it, and I showed it to Alex, and he was just like, took a picture, and he uploaded it to Twitter, and he said, I just seen the greatest ganache ever.
I was curious how many of the stories they were telling at that table were from like real life too. After I found out that they because I had that same suspicion. I was like, I feel like these are real chefs, because also just the way they were talking about food felt like, yes, its actors are incredible, but this felt so true to who these people are. So I really did want to know like how many of the stories of like their first dish or their first failure or whatever were from their real life and not like scripted for them.
Yeah, they sounded real close to home.
Dare I say, like, your greatest mistake is working for a bad boss, such that what it unlocks in you is the culture that you choose to create.
I don't know what your thoughts are on fine dining in general. I know that this show kind of gave us an inside look into what the kitchens look like and everything. And actually, my first job was at a restaurant. It wasn't fine dining, but it wasn't fine dining at all. But I kind of, have experience being in the kitchen and, da 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 da. Yes, behind. Yes, chef. We didn't say that, but we would say behind. Fine dining is something that I enjoy it a lot. But sometimes, you just want to eat. And it's one of those things that you have to do when you're in the mood. I recently went to Paris with Banterly guest host Maya Shetty. She was like, we have to go to a Michelin-starred restaurant while we're in Paris. And I was like, yes, let's do that. And so we found this one called Chabour. And it was like 7 courses and all little tiny bites. Beautiful. And I was like, this reminds me of The Bear. And then it was an open kitchen. And the main chef, who was so nice, they were all shocked that we were there for some reason. They were like, how did you find us? I'm like, you guys just got a Michelin star. Like, what do you mean? How do we find you? But every time he would say something, he'd be like, oui, chef. And I'd be like, oh, this is just like The Bear, but en français. I was like, this is so cool to see in real life, because it's all I could think about was The Bear. That's my little tangent.
I mean, I think my thoughts on fine dining generally, first, there's so much drama, which I didn't realize. One of my close friends from like my journalism cohort, she works at a fine dining restaurant, and she's been telling us all the drama of like the restaurants in New York that like, because they're all so interconnected, like that are closing or have issues of labor rights or are raising their prices or something like that. So I didn't anticipate that. I truly racked my brain, and I cannot remember if I feel like I have had a fine dining experience. And if I have, I think it would have been abroad. I know I haven't had one in the US. So I would like to compare that, like what is the difference? But I don't know. I think fine dining is such an interesting thing, because I think before watching this show, I assumed that those who have fine dining establishments are like rich and uppity and like they themselves could afford to eat at these places. But after watching it, I question, I'm like, like if you own a restaurant or if you're working in a restaurant full time, like, can you afford to go to another fine dining establishment? like without potentially using a connection of sorts you might have. So I thought that was really interesting. I was like, enjoying food as an art is typically reserved for like either really rare occasions for most of us or like for the most rich of us. What are your expectations for season 4? Like, do you think it'll be the last season of the show?
I don't know if it'll be the last. I hope if it is the last, that they close up some loose ends and it's less random different episodes and more like let's move forward. Let's see if they get a Michelin star. Let's do this. Let's blah blah blah. Where's Claire?
Oh yeah. Where is Claire? She's just at the hospital
doing her little ER doctor thing. Which is great. Good for her. But yeah, I was reading an article today, and I guess they filmed a lot of season 4 with season 3. So some of the actors didn't know what they could talk about because they don't know what got released and what didn't and what's coming up. So I don't know what that says, but I am excited for season 4.
I've heard it could drop as soon as like the end of this year, because they filmed most of it, which would be, I wonder though, I think I read that they filmed 18 episodes. So I wonder if that means season 4 would be 8 episodes or if they're going to go back and like film more. But yeah, another season by the end of the year would be really great. Bring back real television, you know?
Yes, chef.
But with that, if you guys have more thoughts, feel free to share them with us, Banterly at immigrantlypod.com, and engage with us on our socials at Immigrantly Media on Instagram and at Immigrantly Podcast on TikTok.
Banterly is produced by Shay Yu, written by us, the co-hosts Suha Musa and Aidan Taylor. The executive producer and editorial review is done by Sadia Khan.
The Banterly theme music is by Simon Hutchinson, and additional music is by Epidemic Sound. See y'all next week.